Okay, hello everyone. Hello. Welcome to Basics of Digital Painting. This is the free class I run every week. And I'm really excited because this time I actually prepared for class. You guys, you did an amazing job on the homework. Last week I decided it was the first time I was going to take a look at homework, and I thought I would just get in there and I was going to wing it. And I felt underprepared. So this week I came in and I looked at every submission inside the homework channel. In the homework channel. Oh, hey, we got a new one from Lele. And I'm noticing that a lot of you who are doing the homework are also showing up to the live event, which I love. It's been really great to begin to recognize some faces and get to know your work. And if any of you want to have some live feedback, you are welcome to raise your hand while I'm going over the homework and ask to be up on stage, and you can come and talk about your impression of the assignment, ask for critique, things like that. I'm available for this hour, and so feel free to use me. I've got a few notes of people who I wanted to look at, but I was getting a request from Uzeri about, let's see. I need to figure out a way where I can look at this channel, look at two channels at the same time. So yeah, if there is somebody on in the audience that wants to chat about their assignment, who wants feedback, feel free to raise your hand. We can pull you up on stage now. Otherwise, I have a short list of notes of pieces that I thought were particularly interesting that I'm going to give some feedback on. That hopefully that's going to be instructive for everybody out in the audience. Oh, okay. So we got a couple people who want to pop up and speak. I'm going to bring Chris up first. Chris,
Hello.
How's it going?
Hey, good. Hold on, let me pull up my homework.
Yeah, let me pull up your homework also. This is a bit of a back and forth challenge right now. This is something I'm going to iron out. Okay. All right, so I just need to find yours. How was your experience with the assignment?
A little rough. I realized this is probably like the fifth thing I've ever painted, and possibly the first piece of art I've ever finished.
Wow.
So,
Wow, I'm honored.
yeah, but it's I don't love the results, and coloring was very rough. I've never done that before. And the last assignment,
there's been a lot of talking in the homework channel, people saying they spent longer on it than they expected. It was tougher than they wanted. They weren't happy with the results. I wanted to put you guys in a challenging situation, and so I'm very happy to hear that everyone, is having these kind of experiences, because that means everyone was having a learning experience.
Yeah, the last one I went right into color, and it was terrible. So this one I feel less bad about, but still plenty of room for improvement.
Well, you said this is maybe the first painting you've ever finished, but I noticed that you did really good on the structure of the piece and the likeness on the figure. Do you have some prior experience with drawing, or are you just taking to this study stuff very easily?
I've done drawing stuff, but I've been kind of stuck in the just doing fundamentals for a long time, for a year or two. I'm trying to make myself draw for fun or do other things, but faces are always something that I avoid like the plague.
I thought you did pretty good with the face.
Can you screen share?
Oh, I'm not screen sharing. That's a good point. I have the OBS is capturing this, but I'll share so the audience could see as well. There we go.
Yeah, but usually I don't do faces. The eyes, I definitely are she looks shocked. They're they're too wide. The face is too long. I don't know. The shading's not great, and I spent 8 hours on this, as much as it doesn't look like it.
I can believe it. With your level of experience, it is going to take a lot longer, but that will speed up
everything I was doing. I was I don't know how to do this. I had to figure it out.
No, here's my impression of it as an expert who has done this kind of work for a long time, but also taught a lot of people. It's going to get a lot faster, quickly, if you keep up with these kinds of assignments, because a lot of what you're experiencing now is stumbling over the basic use of the tools. Where you are with it right now is an excellent place. You've done really well with the colors. You have a very cohesive, complete looking palette. I can look at this and say, hey, this is a pastel color palette. There's not a lot of questions about what your creative choices were here. it seems like, you know where you feel like you're falling short. You say, she looks shocked. The face is too long. Okay, well, as far as self-assessment goes, like you've kind of nailed it, which is a huge hurdle to cross. So, the thing I want to express all the time with people is that when you get these feelings of being a little disappointed in your work, like that represents you learning. Like your brain gives itself signals of like satisfaction and disappointment as sort of a reward and a punishment. And that is like, that's the sensation of your brain actually rewiring yourself to get better at painting. And like, so when I hear that, I think like, that's great. That means that you have definitely made changes, like physical changes in your brain. And you've felt that. It's like a muscle ache after going to work out. And that means that you have made substantial progress, even without me seeing it before and after. I know from hearing your experience that you've made substantial progress in getting better at painting. So if you can withstand that, like that ache that comes with learning, you will continuously get better at these things that you're currently judging yourself fairly harshly on right now. So I want to add that as a bit of encouragement. I'm sure that there's a number of people who are very early into their art experience right now, and it's something I think is really important because one of the key things people are always trying to do is eliminate that feeling of disappointment in themselves. And like there is no eliminating it. It will stick with you for as long as you are learning as good as you ever get. And it's really just a matter of learning that it's normal and accepting it that makes it a lot easier to deal with. So if you continuously feel that way, I don't want you to feel like you are stunted in some way. I want you to realize that's a sensation of progress.
Okay. Yeah, after I did the first assignment, I was like literally just like laying in bed and thinking about it all the time. Like, oh my God, that was so bad. I need to do better. That was like, it ruined my life.
Oh, no. That's good. No, that's good. Like being obsessed with it and wanting to always do better, that's a positive feeling. Like that's been most of my life as an artist is like being driven by that desire of like thinking like, well, what if I went back and I did better on the next one? And it's never ended. So, that's actually a sensation that I've actually sought out more and more over time. I think you did a really great job on this. Do you have any specific questions I can go over? Otherwise, I think you're going to get some other bits of knowledge that might be relatable, like as I go through these other ones.
Yeah, I guess my specific question I'm going to come up with is, so like because I want like a more painterly style, and as I went down, I was like, because I remember seeing like you do like the most detail in the face, and then as it goes down, you can kind of, yada yada the details. Yeah. And well, actually, the person above me did a pretty good job of it, I think. But I don't know if you had any specific tips on like simplifying complicated, because there's a lot of flowers and just like chaos in the middle. Oh
man, the flowers got me. I didn't post mine. I should post my homework before I go live next time, but I did this too. I get hung up on drawing each individual petal on a flower instead of being able to kind of generalize. Like there's a bunch of petals. And Yusuf is somebody I'm gonna be talking about a little bit more in a second. I think he did a great job with picking out some flowers to specifically detail, while other ones, as you said, were a little bit more yada yada. And that's the key. And there's no right and wrong way to do that. It's one of the things that's actually really cool about seeing a lot of people do the same assignment is that as you look through, you can see where different people push their chips. And so like you have made your choices about where you want to put detail, where you want to put time, and other people have put it in different places. And while you have less efficiency in your mark making and the way you use your tools because you're very early on, it's taking you like 8 hours to do something that another person might have done in 2. But it's like there's not a bit of wisdom that's going to overcome that. That's not academic learning. That's just going to be mileage that's going to help you cover that gap. I think you are going to probably have, if you continue with this, you're going to have moments where you're just going to like make a brush stroke and you're going to go, oh my God, that just carved this huge path right through this complicated shape, and now it's broken up, and now I see it. It's like it's something you can only really see for yourself. I think I'm going to go over the assignment for next week is going to be about creating a kind of hierarchy of shapes in a simplified way, and that might address that. Yeah, no, I think you understand the base idea of trying to focus your time and your attention and your detail on the places where you think are most important, and then letting other stuff go. And you're already off to the races on it. Like you've clearly spent a lot of time rendering on the face, and somebody could have done a version where the face was almost totally flattened, and all their attention was on the flowers, or only the clothing folds, only the denim was in focus, and everything else was pushed aside. There's any number of creative choices that are correct, and so it's discovering what you want to do with it is like a big part of the process. So, yeah, I think you did a great job. Thanks for coming on stage.
Yeah, thanks a lot for the critique.
Do we have another person had their hand raised earlier? Museri. Hey, I asked you to come on stage. Sorry, Lele. I'll get to you in just a second. Hey, Museri, how's it going?
Hi, it's going well. Thanks for asking. What about you?
I'm doing great. I'm really stoked. You were saying you're kind of ashamed at posting this one. This is a recurring message this week.
Yeah, because I don't know. I just feel like since I started learning like at 16, I started learning at 16. I used to draw a lot as a kid, but I stopped because I was really lazy. So every time that I do draw, I feel this like unrelenting guilt of leaving it behind. So now I have to catch up and everything. And I've already been learning for a year, so I feel like I should be somewhere further along the line than I already am.
Oh boy, I relate to that. I spent 20 years of art career never doing a study. I think how much better I would be if I had done study along with my work and taking classes and learned traditional tools and gotten good at life drawing and studied all the muscles in the body. I'm seeing all these beginners go through all these muscle studies. They know human anatomy better than I do. And I'm like, oh my God, what did I do making these choices? I also think that feeling of regret is just simply a matter of there's no way of going through life without experiencing that sensation. And art is just this little microcosm where we experience all these feelings, And so I totally relate to the feeling that you have. I don't know if there's any way to act on it other than to treat your study now with as much seriousness as you wish you had done in the past. But moving on to the technical stuff, you were saying CSP has a really weird color layer.
Yeah, exactly, because if you look at the colors, it looks like it was done with a highlighter.
Yeah, I want to talk about blending modes a little bit. That was one of the things I laid aside here. There were some people that work directly in color, and for people who do that, I salute you because I've never been able to do it very well. And for some people, that's absolutely the right choice. But I always do black and white into color. It's the only way I can think through a piece. I see a lot of people use the color layer. Are you using the color layer on CSP? The blending mode that is just called color?
Yeah, that's the one I use.
Okay. I have deep skepticism of this blending mode. It's not just CSP, it's also in Photoshop. A lot of these blending modes work identically between the different programs, which makes it really easy for anyone who's working in Krita or CSP or Photoshop or Procreate. They basically all work the same. The color layer does feel, like you said, a little bit more like a highlighter, right?
Yeah.
I hate it. I hate this blending mode, and I think it's bad. I would recommend, there are reasons why I use the color layer sometimes, and I know incredible artists that use the color layer, but I would recommend anybody who's at home who is learning this process, just try to not use it. It's the one that everyone reaches for first because the name is right there on the tin. You want to add color, you should use a color layer, right? But it's deceptive. What it actually is you can see it's part of this group of luminosity, saturation, color, and hue. So what we're looking at here is there's a way of breaking down image data along the lines of if we look at the color picker, there is the hue, saturation, and then black, the HSB. And sometimes people have their HSB sliders. What this color mode, these color modes are, is like the HSB sliders, but as blending modes. So this one just affects where the color is on the color wheel. And you can see it doesn't actually do anything on here because it doesn't affect its saturation at all. While if I change to the saturation, you can see I get these crazy results because it tries to pull up the saturation of the gray tones, and all it's getting is like the JPEG noise. It's really weird. And then luminosity is just changing it to, even though this color here is this cyan or this teal, it's just changing it to like the black levels. And what color layer is it's just a hue and saturation layer running at the same time. So it's like, it's just the H and the S slider on the HSB color selector, and it's just pushing everything in there, which is like, it's not accurate to the way that light works. It's not accurate to the way that color works. It's like just sort of computer shorthand for moving the hue slider and the saturation slider to match whatever's on, that layer. So it's just a merging of these two blending modes here, hue and saturation. The one that I've seen a lot of people use back in the day was multiply. And multiply creates a much more natural effect overall. But the downside of it is that it only darkens colors. So you can see you can get a nice color glaze that looks pretty decent with multiply, but you can't create highlights no matter how bright of a color it goes. So you're always going to end up creating a kind of dark underpainting whenever you use multiply to create a base tone. I think that this can be really good if you wanted to create a sort of a palette, and that you were going to paint up from. Like, you pick whatever colors are going to be in the scene, and then you have this sort of dark, gloomy underpainting that you can then go on top of and pick a highlight color and work on top of it. So something like this. And then you start working on top of it and picking the highlight colors that you're actually going to apply. And that way, it's kind of a mixture of like this working from black and white into color the way I do, and like working directly into color, because you're sort of building up the value in color together on top of this like dark base layer if you use multiply. The one I use is hard light. And this is kind of giving crazy results. I laid it on really, really thick. So it's going totally neon. The things that are interesting about, hard light is that at 100%, fully saturated colors are like almost totally opaque, as is white, as is black. So unlike multiply, where, white is just going to be transparent, you can see you get these nice color glazes with a saturated color. Black is going to completely blot things out. White is just invisible. With hard light, you actually get all the corners of the color spectrum. If you have a color triangle, all the corners are going to be basically opaque. And then 50% gray is invisible, which is wild, right?
Yeah.
The reason why this is valuable is that if something has a bright color in real life, like if, say, someone has a bright orange jacket, it will actually, and I could pull up a photo of this, it'll compress the value range. I'm just going to search up tab here. You can see in photos with a really, really saturated color, you actually don't get a lot of value range. Things don't push to black, and they also don't push to white on super saturated colors. Unless they start to get like really reflective or there's an incredibly deep shadow, it actually flattens the range of values when you have a very bright color, which is exactly what happens with hard light, because it's opaque at these higher saturated points. And then as you start to go down into duller colors, then more of the rendering that you've done underneath actually starts to show back through. So it starts to conform to the natural behavior of color more than what you get out of something like out of the color layer. Even though hard light doesn't mean anything to you and color seems like the right thing just due to the names, I think hard light does a way better job at doing the kind of simple color glazing that most people are looking for when they're trying to do this sort of thing. And you can see how you actually get this kind of like highlighting effect. When we go over really dark areas, it starts to bring saturation into them, without completely overriding like all of the values that are underneath. I really like hard light as a method of colorizing stuff. And especially when you combine it with other tools and you kind of layer it together, it can be really good both for creating local colors for things as well as shining colored lights. Like if we wanted to have like a colored light going on the side of the face, it will bring in a lot of the value of that color as well as the saturation. And so it can be good for creating like a lighting effect as well.
I've also seen that hard light is used for highlights, but I never really got to using it because whenever I try to, the whites that I put down look way too dull compared to what I see online.
That it might just take a little bit of practice to figure out where you want to pick the color to get the best result. I also recommend glazing it on fairly light. I have my opacity down at like 10% because hard light tends to hit pretty hard. So you want to kind of build it up through layers of glazing, like you've got thinned out paint and you're just laying on thin layers of glaze to try to like bring color into the scene. This is sort of like how they do it with classical oil painting when they start with sepia and then do glazes of color over the top. I would approach it in a similar way. I also think that with this study here, you don't have a lot of value range built into it already. There's like on the hat, we have mostly just one flat bit of value, like one solid value. There's not a lot of dynamic range on the face and shoulder. And when you start to layer color over the top of a black and white image, if it doesn't have a lot of value data underneath it, it's going to be harder to tell whether or not the color glazes you're putting on top feel right. So my experience with doing this is that like if I'm trying to lay color on top of a black and white image and it doesn't seem to stick to it and nothing looks right, it's probably because I haven't taken the black and white version of the painting far enough before trying to add color. It's a little bit of a balance because I saw another comment in here from Nyantra, who I saw in the audience, about how they realized after a few failed attempts that it was easier to get color added onto the image with there being kind of less value work being done. And finding the spot, this sort of entry point that works best for you is really important because Nyantra was going like really early without a lot of value in there. That would be too early for me personally. But then Miguel Firewolf did an excellent job and they went in with an extreme amount of detail already in the black and white and got some pretty excellent results. So there's two right next to each other are almost two totally opposite approaches to this. And it really speaks to like how you need to learn, like if you're going to use this method, where do you enter into color? I was just talking about this with one of my students this morning in my mentorship class, that like the value of doing these kinds of studies is that you get to try out, on one of them, you say, I'm going to go into color really early. And then on the next one, you go, I'm going to wait and push into color really late. And then you get to figure out where in that range do you need to fall. Each of these studies is not really about creating an amazing JPEG that's going to impress other people online. The whole point of it is for us to be sensitive to the ways in which we are the ways in which we naturally put these images together. What's working if we try to do things in different orders or try out different brush sets? Like, this is a open platform for you to be able to try out different work processes and just fail over and over and over again. I saw a lot of people who are saying that they were, struggling or frustrated or just posting even just because they promised themselves they would, even though they didn't like the results. And I just want to say that that is exactly the right attitude for studies. And this is study work. So it's great that you all put yourself out there and tried some things. Even if you felt like it was a failure, you tried it, you finished it, you posted it. If you can keep repeating that, you are going to figure out like where the groove is for you and how to get the best results for you personally. So congratulations. And thanks for coming up on stage, Museri. Is there any other questions that you had for me before I let you go?
Yeah, I was just wondering because the rendering of the jacket looks really, really dull. So I was just wondering if it was because I spent way too little time on it, or if there's a specific workflow that I have to follow to make it look like denim.
Ah, okay. I think that you have a fairly small number of brushstrokes adding up to the jacket here. I think that if you were to spend a little bit more time fussing with it and comparing it back and forth with the reference, that you would, as you built that the value up and just built up the subtlety of it, that it would start to reveal itself to you. Because I don't think there's necessarily an academic trick to like figuring out how to make it feel like denim. It really, the answers are really visual ones that you're going to get, from spending more time working from the reference. About how long did you spend working on this?
Well, about 2 hours, maybe a bit more.
That's a good period of time. I would just I wouldn't spend too much longer than that on a study, but see if you can get to the point where you are, have a rough version of the piece, and then spend a little bit more time building in extra layers of subtlety on the values, extra rendering throughout all of the bigger shapes, and comparing that work against what you're seeing in the reference. It's
yeah.
I think that if you spend a little bit more time at this step, that the next step afterwards is going to come along quicker, and you could reach this level of finish, but like with a higher level of detail in the same amount of time.
Because most of the time got sunken into actually trying to figure out how to lay the values on top of it, because I was wondering if I should start with the lightest values or the darkest ones. First, I started with sinking the whole painting in a white color, and I didn't like it. Then I took a whole darker one, if you can see it. It is the most predominant shade in there anyway, but I was just wondering if there was like a recommended way to do it, because I don't feel like spending way too much time on just trying to lay the values down next time.
Right. I personally like going from sort of middle out. So I usually start off with a flat color that's a little bit darker with like a neutral gray background, a lot like what you have here. I have seen some people that only work like white to black. They just go straight on a white page. And to me, it's like watching somebody eat a piece of pizza crust first. Like, it's crazy. But, I've seen people go from, a white page, fully rendered, full color, bit by bit across the whole painting. And I don't know. It's one of those things where it's good that you're experimenting, trying, dark to light, light to dark, see where you have the easiest experience. You're probing the art to try to find where is like the soft spot that you can like make your way through it. You're looking for what feels easy, feels natural. There's not really a correct method. It seems like this attempt that you made here is very close to the one I typically use. All right. I am going to, Laylee want to come on stage and talk, and then I've got a couple of notes, and I'm going to be giving out the assignment. I've got a little lecture prepped. Thanks so much for coming on stage.
Hello.
Hey, Laylee.
Hi. So I just had some questions for you.
Yes.
About my work. So I've been trying to get like a little more painterly style. So I've been mostly using just a round brush and then just like a rake brush for a little bit of texture. But one thing I kind of struggle with is especially on like skin, I want to try to have like more of a smooth transition between two colors. And
Yes.
yeah, I kind of struggle with like smoothing out the transition between colors.
Let me demonstrate how I do it. Okay. My brush, I'm just using a round brush. It's a round brush with like a size flow on it, with the flow turned down to about 10%. It looks like you're using a pretty similar brush here, though.
I actually used your brush from your free brush pack.
Okay, great.
So I think it's the same.
So I usually just turn the opacity down a little bit. This is at 50%, and the main thing is that I make the brush strokes so that, like, with the way I use my brush, with the way my brush is made, you can see that the beginning and end of the stroke are softer than the sides. So if I want to carve a hard edge, not only do I turn the opacity up, but I run along that edge. And then if I want to soften something, I'm turning the opacity down. I hit 5 for 50% here, and then I'm running perpendicular to the edge, and I'm making these strokes this way. So it's just the direction of the stroke that ends up creating like the harder or softer transition. So making softer transitions is about just zooming in, seeing where that transition is, and then making sure that the direction of the brush stroke runs the right way. And you can kind of just knead it around and push it, and it's like pizza dough or like clay. And you can make really long, soft transitions by just being careful about the way you select it. Maybe turning down it all the way down to like 20%, and then you can make kind of like, bigger sweeps of glazes, and you can get really soft transitions pretty fast if you get the hang of it. The other thing that I've started to do more of is, this is sort of for like blending in small areas. Like there's a bit that I want to have like a really soft edge, but I want to have a lot of control over it. The other place where softness versus hardness comes into play is like if you have a big shape, like this hat, right? And you want to make, it's got lots of little bumps and curves in it, but you generally want it brighter over kind of here and a little bit darker over here. Well, trying to get each one of these little lumps to be like kind of smoothly transitioning over the whole length of it can be kind of a pain. So sometimes you'll find yourself like mushing in really big strokes like this, trying to kind of go back and forth with the whole thing. What I've been doing more of recently is that early on in the process, I'm just reaching for that big soft airbrush and just trying to airbrush a little bit over the top of it with a soft brush to try to create these like really big, smooth transitions over like a long distance with big shapes. So that won't necessarily affect all the little edges. You could see it's not really making your hard edges soft, but it is making the bulk of the sleeve a little rounder as a whole. And there's a big difference between those two things. Like when we think about hardness versus softness, there's two levels to it, maybe even more. Where one of them is like, how tight is this transition right at the edge? And you can go through the whole thing and try to make every single line like perfectly tight everywhere, and then think like, there's something missing about this. It should be softer. And then you go and you make everything blurry, and you go, I can't see anything. And now it's all blurry. There is these layers of soft transitions that happen over these harder edges. And I'm going to go over that in just a second. That's going to be the focus of this week's assignment. Did I answer your question? Is there anything else I can go deeper into?
No, that's the only question I had.
Okay,
so
great.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. All right. Let's see. Making some notes here. I wanted to compare two of these different assignments. There is somebody who was Chris Wolf did a really in-depth job trying to create a color palette and was being really scientific about it. And then Yusuf had a super artsy approach to it that I really thought was super effective. This is a really, really great piece. And I saw in this one, oh wait, no, that was the right one. It was just the wrong sized window. Color. Everyone was messing with it this week, and it's hard. Color is really, really tough. One of the ways to make it easier is to do less colors, what we call a limited palette. And I thought Yusuf did a perfect example of this week. And you can see there's there's a lot of different colors overall, but there are two predominant hues. We've got oranges and we got greens, right? And everything in this entire scene is all an orange or a green, is either an orange or a green. And some areas are like greens with some glazes of orange going through them. Some of them are orange with we could see on the skin tone, we've got the orange maybe going a little bit towards more of a pink. But then we've got the green coming in along the transition between the highlight and the shadow, which looks extra super duper artsy and is like a nice little backflip flourish in there. That looks really good. This is where getting these kinds of color subtleties, this is like what I'm often trying to accomplish with the way that I do my color stuff. You can see that if you were to do like a hard light layer and you pick one of these orange colors and you start glazing it over the top of some of these darker areas, you see you get these like nice saturated bits. That's the same thing that's happening here. It seems like what I saw here is that Yusuf might have had like a nice orange color that when you start to glaze it over the top of these darks, you start getting these bits in here. And you can see that like big washes of this red and orange through the hair and the skin tone creates this nice glow, this nice organic glow that feels very natural through here. And you don't end up having to pick a billion different colors. You can look over the whole reference image and pick out where do you want things to be more on this one side of the palette, the orange side, and which side do you want to be on the green side. And then you really don't need to make a ton of tiny micro decisions. What you want is to be able to make a series of very small, very simple decisions, because the human brain kind of has some bottlenecks in it. And you're not going to be able to consider 1,000 variations of a bunch of different colors. Like in here, this color palette being laid out, there's all these different variations of all these different hues, and it's becoming very difficult to balance. There's a lot of juggling going on, and it's hard to feel like it's a single coherent palette. While if we simply just accept the bottleneck of our inability to process tons of variations of tons of different colors and just reduce the problem down to a simpler cool versus warm, orange versus green, and then we start to be able to play with those smaller variations to be able to create nice artistic effects without getting absolutely overwhelmed by color. And then if you're using tools that create very dynamic results, then you can start to you see that there's actually a lot of different variations of orange inside the flower here, and those are emerging naturally from the values that are underneath, being blended with blending modes on top of them, and then maybe a little bit of extra color picking to bring out a couple of key highlights. When you start laying them over each other, you start getting some of these dynamic interactions that create this very elegant, back and forth between these two colors. And this is the reason I like working black and white to color, is because I could never get these kinds of little subtleties like what we see in this flower here with these different bits of saturation, the way that the blacks are kind of glowing and becoming saturated like this around the edges. We see that in the corners of the eye as well to bring down the contrast on the eye. I can get this very easily with the blending mode. I could never in a million years just like color pick it straight out of the color picker. So this is why I say salute to you people who paint straight into color. If you can pull that off, you are doing something that I can't seem to wrap my head around. I don't think I have enough brain cells for it. And so I would say that this case, Chris Wolf's case here, he is trying to throw every single brain cell at this problem. And it is it's an admirable effort, and I could see how much work, how much care is going into it. But I would urge everyone to be lazier, work less, figure out where you can shave away all of the places where you don't feel like you have enough brain power to do it, where you feel like you're struggling, where you feel like you're fighting the tools. Try out these shortcuts, these work methods, ones that I talk about, but also ones that you see online. Research ways of going from black and white into color, and try them out for yourselves in studies to see if you can find one that allows you to just be lazier, work less, and like use less of your brain. Because it's like that. To create an elegant result, we are not going to do it by like thinking harder. We need to find like these weak spots where we're doing like bonus damage to the art by working smart. All right. Both of you did an incredible job. I wanted to compare and contrast these because it felt like philosophically they were very opposed to each other, but I see in both of them a tremendous amount of work and really admirable results. There was one other one that I wanted to highlight. Miguel Firewolf, who did another really crazy job, and they've got an awesome progress shot showing the way that they put together all the values sort of window by window. I've heard this called window painting, where you kind of like fill in a whole area and then another whole area. Again, that's a way I've never been able to quite work it out myself. The thing that stood out to me was that once they went from black and white to color, they laid in the local colors first by doing some color glazes over each of these individual little color zones. And then at the end, we see it pop together. It's like it's a lot of different kind of colors that aren't entirely jiving. And then at the end, it like snaps into place. And we get this really beautiful results where everything feels like it's all part of the same palette. I do this all the time where I'm trying to adjust something at the last minute to bring it all together. There's a bunch of different tools you can use for this. Selective color is good for it. Color balance. Putting a simple like full color overlay over the entire top and use a blending mode, or just turn the opacity down to try to like bring everything together. I'll use gradient maps for this, but like one of the recommendations I want to give is like maybe Miguel Firewolf really likes doing all the local colors, all these little color zones first, and then tying it together. But the innovation that I've had over the years is that I tend to do a gradient map first to try to establish the overall palette, and then come in and do all the individual color zones on top of it. Do the color glazing, not from straight black and white, but from something that has been lightly colorized already. And I found that I needed to like futz with it less that way than doing it this other way, where you like start with a lot of colors that don't necessarily fit, and then you try to like fix them all later. Like I thought if you are feeling like you're always kind of like trying to fix the colors after the fact, it might be something worth trying. All right. So we got, I have one more note in here. Oh man, there's so many really good ones. Amanda, I love it. The way that you did the inventive little like scan lines on the flowers to make it like cyberpunk. I thought that was really cool. Tristan, like the incredible amount of care done to all the flowers on here. I was talking with Chris, who came on stage first, about how everybody has the potential to like pick different areas where they put their focus. And like the amount of focus that's on the flowers here is unbelievable. Every little petal getting so much attention gives off such a different impression than the other pieces. I do wonder if, given that there is so much attention on the flower texture, if you would have gotten an even better result by flattening down the skin tone even more and flattening back some of the areas that you were invested in less to try to like bring even more of the focus to the flowers. That could be really cool. H Eagle, this is great. You're getting into digital painting for the first time. I hope you're enjoying the tools. It can be a little intimidating at first, but I would say stick to the brush tool as much as possible. Don't worry about getting bogged down into too many extra little like tools and details and workflows and stuff. Just like with the pencil, pencil's a super powerful tool. The brush tool in Photoshop, CSP, Procreate, Krita, just using the brush tool and sticking with it and focusing on it in like almost like a traditional painting medium is what I'd recommend for somebody who's just a beginner. Great one from Wagyu. Delia, you killed it this week. Really good study. Who was I gonna mention? God, there's so many really good ones. Oh, I really love the sort of gray shadow. The way the gray shadow brings out like attention to the lighting here is really cool. I would have liked to see if that same gray shadow trick was applied inside more of the red. I think that you would have tied it together even tighter there. It's a really cool effect, Xeno. I need to make better notes. I did pretty good notes. The assignment was a bit of a nightmare for me. Values, grayscale are so fun, but I'm terrified of using colors. I have issues with making them harmonize and picking them to look good in general. Getting out of my comfort zone for once was nice, though. The vid of my progress is black and white, separate file, but forgot to record. That's all good. Yeah, I just wanted to say, like, if that's the way anyone here is feeling, like, great. This is one of the reasons why I thought it would be good to try out a study where you're not sticking directly just to the color that's in the study, because learning color is kind of its own little side discipline where different people have very different tastes about what they want to create. And so in order to explore that with a kind of unified base where you don't need to overthink it, you don't need to come up with a brilliant idea for painting, you can just take an existing study and just say, this one's about the colors, and push yourself out of your comfort zone and do exploration and make mistakes and try different workflows. I think if you're wanting to study more color, rather than reproducing the color naturally out of a study or out of a screenshot, I think it can be even more valuable to just do imaginative color on top of a study like this. So I'm really glad that you had fun with this. All right. The last thing I want to go over this week is a little demo leading up to the assignment that we've got for this week. I was thinking about a conversation I was having with a friend. I was trying to help him figure out how to paint. He's a really accomplished artist as somebody who draws. He's really good at drawing, but was struggling to figure out how to paint the drawings. And I was like, no, dude, it's easy. It's all just gradients. And he's like, and this, so for some reason, this piece of advice clicked for him, and he suddenly learned how to paint off of this advice. It's all just gradients. And so I want to try to give this advice, and it's going to lead into the assignment this week in an effort to see if maybe it will unlock something for you guys. And it's the all just gradients theory of painting. So the assignment this week is that I want you to paint a cloudscape from imagination. You can draw one big fluffy cloud. You can draw a whole landscape of clouds. Start something that you can finish. You don't draw anything else. Just draw a cloud. It sounds like it should be easy. It's one of the things I've painted the most over the years. So I have lots of little feelings about it, but I wanted to demonstrate how this, like, it's all just gradients approach can potentially lead you to drawing really good clouds. Okay. So we have our base cloud shape here. We got some lovely lumps. It's just lumps, right? I'm doing the Olympic podium style of shape design here. which is to say first place, second place, third place, right? Whenever you want to lay out a bunch of shapes and it's safe to do 3 of them, you just do, one of them tall, one of them medium, one of them short. First place, second place, third place. It always looks pretty balanced when you do it like that. It's nice. So, I just started with a simple gradient with using the gradient tool. And then I am putting a big gradient on the cloud shape here. End to end, it's just doing one thing, and that is it's going from light to dark. And the dark color I just sampled, the light color is just white, and the dark color I just sampled off the background. And then using my round brush, just lightly blended between the two of them here. I don't know if I really need to demo this, but I do love kind of doing this sort of thing where it's just sample a little bit here, and then it's just kind of progressively mushing the two together until you end up with something that feels like a gradient. So there's a rough gradient here. And, that's easy. But the reason why this is relevant is that if you look at a lot of references, you'll see that almost all the time when something looks painterly, the thing that makes it look painterly is that there's like a transition of light over distance. So maybe there's like a spotlight on somebody's face, and then as you get further away from the face, like the spotlight falls off and it gets darker. Or, there's always some reason why. There's all kinds of excuses, but at the end of the day, whether it's like the way the form is turning under the light or the way that the figure's being lit, there's always going to be a part that is brighter, and then there's going to be a part that's going to go towards darkness, and that makes our big gradient. And so when we're looking at a figure, we have to pick where's the dark part going to be, where's the light part going to be, and then we just make a transition between them. I don't know. I don't know if that's even an insight. That is just how it works. You can do it with a really brushy tool like I've done. Some people do it a lot softer. And then what we're going to do is we're going to break it up even smaller. We're going to maintain the same big gradient. The big gradient's going to stay there. It still goes light to dark, but now we have smaller gradients built in. Now we got these smaller stair steps. So we take the big gradient and we start to chop it up into smaller pieces while still maintaining the big one. So the big shape goes from light to dark. The smaller shapes, or the medium-sized ones, they go from light to dark also in the same direction. And you end up with something that starts to look 3D. And you don't even actually need to do any of the stuff that makes things look 3D. You don't need to understand how it's sculpted or how the direction of the light is going or how occlusion works, ambient occlusion, whatever. You can do this more or less simply by understanding not like what makes the light work, but like what does it look like in the end, which is that it's a series of small gradients nested inside a big gradient. This is like the question earlier about how do you soften things? Well, this looks really soft, and that appealing look is a big gradient over the whole thing with smaller little gradients that are breaking it up into smaller pieces. And that's going to feel really good. The final step to this is we just break up those medium-sized shapes into even smaller ones. And you can see that these stair steps are still there. The whole thing goes from light to dark. There's these smaller pieces that also still go light to dark that are nested inside of them. The only real difference here is that I have also added additional lumps on lumps, but across a different dimension. So instead of just focusing on kind of filling that space with gradients, you can see there's also these lumps that are still there. Well, I just took those and I started cutting pieces out and building them up, and I started putting lumps on top of the lumps. So you could take this big lump, and instead of it being one solitary thing, you could then break it up into a big, medium, and small set of lumps also. And then you could take each of those and break them into small, medium, and big lumps too. See? And as you break these down into more and more granular pieces, keeping some level of artificial randomness to it, you can end up with a result that feels chaotic while being organized. It feels, organic and natural and beautiful, and it appeals to the eye very easily. And the number of brushstrokes used to like build this up is actually pretty limited. This final step here, you can actually see there's not a lot of complexity. There's some of the background sky. Here's me just sampling off the canvas and just pushing it around just a little bit. But built up on top of this existing substructure, we end up with what feels like a very natural looking, very organic looking cloud. And the reason why I'm bringing this up is like partially because painting clouds is really fun and you can throw them in the background of anything, but actually like most painting, when you're looking at the highlighted area on anything, you're going to end up with something like this. Like you're going to have a sleeve with wrinkles in it, or you're going to have a leg with muscles on top of it. It's going to be like a big shape, like a cylinder or something. And then it's going to have like, muscle wrinkles in it. And it's going to turn into like waves on waves, lumps on lumps, big shapes with smaller shapes cut into it. And when I thought about this, I'm like, most of what I'm doing when I'm painting is just this, but like with different textures. And then there's shadows. Like in the lit area of the painting, it's just lumps on lumps every time. And so this is where my comfort zone is this is why like doing organic stuff is my comfort zone, is because I can always just sort of default back to this algorithm, and it's served me incredibly well. You can use this for rocks, you can use it for clouds, you can use it for fabric, for skin, for anything that has like organic shapes. They tend to have this pattern of like ripples going across waves. Big shapes with like smaller echoes sort of nested inside of them. And if you can like get comfortable with like maintaining the big wave while also doing the smaller ones, and then break up the texture of it and get it even another layer smaller, you have that. That's when people talk about, you got to do the big, medium, small shapes. It's all about the shapes. I don't think it's the shapes. People just like to use the word shapes. To me, it's gradients. Drawing is its own thing. Painting is all gradients. Painting is, if you want to make something look painterly, you just do this. And you can find ways, if you look for it, to do it just about everywhere in every painting. So that's it. I'm going to write the assignment down in the homework channel. Thanks everyone for showing up. This has been tremendously fun, and I really appreciate all of the investment you guys are doing into doing the homework assignments. I'll be back again next week. And I want to take a look at your clouds, and I'll give you whatever feedback you want. You can do sunset clouds. You can do blue sky in the background. You can make, totally epic clouds or peaceful looking clouds, like whatever you want. It's kind of open-ended, but I want you to try to do this like painterly approach to building them up. All right? Well, that's it. I'm going to turn the recording off. Thank you so much. And I'll see you guys around. Goodbye.